Raise your hand if you love helping people, if you love connecting with people, if you love teaching, you love problem solving. That's almost everyone in this room. Raise your hand if you genuinely love the sales process. Love a sales conversation. Yeah. There's like 4. Y'all are my people. So why the disconnect? Brittany said it yesterday. She'll probably add in 2 extra rounds of revisions, stay up all night, sending you emails at 11 p.m., won't charge you for it, but like ask her to raise her rates. No, that's off limits. So many of us, when we think about sales, we picture Danny DeVito, right? Or the salesman who comes to your front door who wants to replace your roof or your windows. And that thought that comes up, that being the first thought when you think of sales, is the problem. So we're going to talk a lot about identity today. We're going to talk a lot about the brain. Because when you understand what's going on up here, when you're having a sales conversation with somebody, you can start to change your mind around sales. And you can stop seeing it as the gross, icky, manipulative, slimy, whatever thing. And that's not it for everyone. Some of us are like, I love making money, and that's kind of like the necessary step to get there, right? It's not so gross to everyone. But I have clients who show up on a sales call. They are so talented and genuinely love helping people, and they forget their name. That's a problem. That is a problem if you want to help people. So it's my mission today to help you change your own mind about sales and see this from a new perspective, one that maybe you can get yourself behind. So we're going to talk about the brain first. I'm not a neuroscientist, so just, adjust your expectations. But I have been doing this a while, so I'm just speaking from my experience, okay? So who has been that person who got on a sales call and forgot your own name? You're like, what am I trying to say? Why that happens is because you have this little guy in your brain here called the amygdala. And this is if your brain was a club, this is the bouncer. And this guy's scanning your environment all the time for threats. Its job is to keep you safe, but also to keep you energy efficient. And so if something is boring, amygdala is yeah, we don't need this. If something is scary or seems maybe unsafe, the amygdala lights up and says, we're going into a sympathetic response in the nervous system, which is stress response. Fight, flight, freeze. And the problem with the amygdala and so many of these amazing parts of our brain is that they came here to help keep us alive in a world where we were being, our survival was constantly a threat. And that's not the reality anymore, but our brain doesn't know the difference. So it doesn't know the difference between a lion charging at you and somebody saying, no thanks, I don't want what you're selling. I have to look at my notes. Sometimes I get just going, and then I forget. Okay. So if we are coming to a sales conversation, and we have these beliefs around what selling is that are maybe not so helpful, if I ask for what I really want to ask for, if I ask for my worth, if I charge these prices, somebody's going to judge me, or maybe they'll talk poorly about me, or maybe they'll think I'm coming from a bad place. Then our brain is going to go, this is not safe. So it's going to cut off access to your prefrontal cortex. And like Ming was just talking about, the prefrontal cortex is the human brain. It's the place where our language and our empathy and our creative thinking and our logic come to the table. Down here in the amygdala, that's like lizard brain. So if you're selling and you feel like it is not safe to sell to somebody, you're not going to be able to get the words out of your mouth. And if you're the buyer, because this happens too, and we have two people coming into a relationship, or a conversation, maybe they enter into a relationship. We have two people coming to a conversation, and they're both bringing all of these thoughts and feelings and beliefs about money and sales and all this stuff to the table. And it's like a gamble. What is going to happen? What's going to happen? So if you're the buyer and you're coming into a situation, if you've had a lot of really negative sales experiences in your life, you're going to come up with your guard up already. And I'm just going to tell you, for most people, the second they hear a pitch, the second they even get a whiff of that the pitch is coming, guard goes up. So many of you are trying to sell to people who are not able to hear the message. And if you're actually in a sales conversation with somebody and their amygdala gets activated, all they are going to be thinking about is, how do I get out of here as quickly as possible? And they're going to tell you, I need to go talk to my wife. Or I got to go think about it. They're going to come up with whatever bullshit they can come up with as quickly as possible because their brain is like, this is not safe. Please leave. We also have this part of our brain called the anterior insula, and this is where the ick lives in your brain. And so this part of your brain is actually in charge of empathy. It is in charge of your morals. And it is also in charge of gross. Which is why we call sales icky. It's not actually gross. It's not is selling the same as throwing up? No, that's actually gross. But because it's coming from, it's being processed in the same part of your brain, that's why we get that feeling in our bodies. And what it really is, what that feeling really is your brain trying to interpret, does this match with my ethics? And is this in integrity? So my whole thing is that sales has to come in an ethical delivery and in integrity, because it is the only way to truly bypass these alarm bells. So what happens if you have all this experience and these thoughts? And actually, I want to back up here a minute. Can anyone think of a really positive sales experience that you've had lately? Yes. Can you tell us a little bit about what made it positive?
I filled out an application online, took me 15 minutes to buy a car, got to the dealership, and left in 30 minutes.
So it was convenient?
Absolutely.
There was no resistance at all?
Correct.
It was efficient?
Yes.
I'm guessing those are high values for you.
Yes. Respectful of my time.
Boom. Who's had a negative experience in sales recently? What made it negative?
It was a car repair, and he started with, I hate to have to make this call, it's usually really bad when we do, and then he just went on and said, that'll be $11,000. But he framed it so that it was like the most grievous and tragic thing, and then like wrapped the entire thing in fear.
Yeah, you're like, great. So most of the time, when we have a really positive sales experience, actually when I ask that question, I usually people have a hard time answering it. Because when we have a positive sales experience, we normally register it as a helpful interaction. We don't even clock it as a sales experience. But when we have a sales interaction that is bad, we label it a sales interaction. Oh, this guy was selling to me. I was being sold to really hard. I walked in and they were trying to sell this thing to me. So when our brain categorizes sales as icky, basically what's happening is we just have this miscategorized file now. And because of neuroplasticity, we can change our minds about sales, which is what's really cool. And that's what I really like to do. So we need to take it out of this file and get it into these files. So when we start to realize that sales could actually be about connecting with people, and I can do it in a way that works for my identity of who I am and what I value, we can change the game. So let's go a little deeper first into what drives these behaviors. Raise your hand if you've ever avoided posting about your offer because you didn't want to be cringy online. How about you didn't follow up with somebody because you didn't want to be annoying? How about you held back on a sales call even though you really know your stuff because you didn't want to seem like too much? Or how about you just gave it all away for free because I want to be helpful? Can we see how this is costing your business a lot of money? So when your identity is, what everybody raised their hand at the beginning, when your identity is I'm helpful, I'm a problem solver, I'm an empath, I'm a connector, I'm a teacher, but your belief is that sales is manipulative, it's taking from people, it's bad in some way, insert whatever you believe here, that creates something that psychologists call cognitive dissonance. And that is what happens in your brain when you're trying to do something that is not in alignment with who you are. And cognitive dissonance creates genuine discomfort in your body. And when you feel that, all you do is avoid. We also have this thing working against us called loss aversion or a negative bias. Who here has heard of a negative bias? Our brains are basically wired to see the negative things, not the positive things. But it also puts a magnifying glass on those negative things. So when we're going out there into the world to sell our thing, we spend most of our time thinking about, what if they reject me? What if they think I'm pushy? What if I damage this relationship? Like Susie sent me this referral, and if I charge too much, is Susie going to think poorly about me? When really we're like, maybe I'll get a client who's awesome. That's what's really going to happen. And this it's working for the buyer too, or against the buyer also. And this is why we get so many objections or obstacles that we have to overcome in the sales process. What if it doesn't work? What if I don't like it? What if I can't implement it? What if it's a waste of my time and money? Like, what if it works? You know? So the math always tells our brains to do nothing. I talked a little bit about this before, but when the amygdala gets lit up, it cuts off access to the part of your brain where your logic, your creativity, your language live. So now all of a sudden, communication is really hard. And when we are selling something and this happens, and our brain goes offline, now all of a sudden, what was my pitch? What was I going to say? What are all the things? How do I even describe my thing? The number one question I get from my clients is, how do I get people to see the value in what I'm selling? We're going to talk about that in just a minute. But people can't find their words. They start rambling. You might think to yourself, what am I even saying? You're noticeably nervous. And we have these fun little things called mirror neurons in our brains. So we see somebody doing something, and then we start to mirror that back. And so if you are nervous in a sales conversation, guess what? So is the person who's buying from you. Who feels confident making a buying decision when you feel nervous? Again, let me go think about it. My clients send me recordings of them doing sales conversations all the time, and I listen to them, and then I tell them, don't do that. Do this. But we really, in all seriousness, we break it down. We say, okay, here's where this went off the rails. Here's what could have happened here. You were talking to an analytical person, so this is what mattered to them. Here's where we missed the boat, right? We really break it down. And what I see all the time is not that they said something wrong. It was that their body language and their energy communicated to the person, you can't trust me. Because they were nervous. When you're the buyer and your amygdala gets activated, now there's no way you're making a decision. And maybe you might make a decision, like Terry spoke about earlier. You know, you go to a Tony Robbins event, they get you all dysregulated. Here's the offer, you buy the offer, and then you're like, what did I just do? I hear this story like on a weekly basis. I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, I shouldn't have bought that thing. It was all hype. They were really good at NLP. They were really good at sales. No, they were really good at manipulation. And I'm not down with that. Because what that does is that creates upset customers. That creates people who are like, what happened here? And why do I feel weird about it? And I work mainly with solo practitioners, small business owners who don't have big teams, and they rely on referrals. And you can't run a referral-based business when you're manipulating people into buying things. So, when you're in this space, you might make a decision, but it's probably not going to be the aligned decision for you. Or you're like, this is really not safe and I need to get out of here quickly. The skeptic might come online. If you've ever had a sales conversation where somebody all of a sudden is asking you tons of questions, or maybe they are even upset. I had a client once who, she told me that she would get viscerally angry when people would come to her front door to sell her something. Like she would lose her shit and yell at them. And I was like, what? Being in sales, I'm like, I love when people come to my front door. I'm like, let's go. Give me your best shot. Like, what's this gonna, my husband's like, you're a nerd. I'm like, I can't wait to see what they're gonna do. You don't want me in a room while you're buying a car. I'll tell you that. Where was I going with that story? Anyway, she was getting really angry. And when we dug into, like, why are you getting so angry when people are just, like, they're trying to make a living? They're, like, out here probably with more courage than you have. If you've ever done cold sales, I have, it's terrifying. Brutal. Why I teach what I do now. Let's not do that. And when we looked at it, it was like she grew up with a father who was an intimidator and an interrogator, and the second she would start entering into a sales conversation, she was like that small child again. And she would get so defensive. But she was also running a business, and she had to have sales conversations with people. And when she would have a sales conversation with people, she would project this onto them. She was like gearing up for a fight every time she was asking for money. And she was completely unaware of it. So these are the things people do. Okay, I really want to talk about attachment, because so many of us, especially when we're starting our businesses, but we can cycle back into this at any point in time. When you're starting out, though, and you're like literally in survival mode, and you're like, I gotta make money, you are attached to whether people buy from you or not. And they can feel that. Anybody ever date someone who ended up being like really needy? Or like maybe there was like a hint of that starting to happen on a first date, and you're like, get me out of here. Exactly. It is so repelling. Attachment is so repelling. And people cannot put words to it, but they feel it every time. And you might be attached to this because of your identity. I have to be the number one in my industry. You know? So now we have to be closing sales. But sometimes the attachment might be coming up because we have these unresolved thoughts and beliefs and feelings that we don't even understand, we don't even know they're there. But the more you need the sale, the more you convince yourself you need the sale, the more your brain will create the exact conditions that push it away. Ignore this thing at the bottom. We didn't do an exercise. I forgot to take it off. So what I really want you to understand today is that great salespeople are not great talkers. I have a 4-year-old who is a jibber-jabberer. Like, I'm like, he will be on this stage someday. And everyone we meet is like, put that kid in sales. And I'm like, no. Being good at sales is being good at listening. Because we cannot convince anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. They have to convince themselves. And the more you show up and try and convince people, the more they get that needy ick. And so great salespeople lead with curiosity. They ask questions. Great salespeople are great leaders. And great salespeople have great communication skills. I loved was it Diana? What you were talking, maybe it was Diana, was talking about earlier about being clear. A confused mind is not buying anything. So leadership is how we create safety in a sales process. I hope you all understand the importance of there being safety in the sales process, because you're not getting through the amygdala if it's not safe. Who here has kids? Okay. Have you ever seen somebody else's kids, of course, that are like wild. And you're like, are there parents involved here? What is happening? They're wild and they are not calm. They are anxious. You're like, this is not good. Kids love and feel safe when someone they trust is calmly in charge. This is like my practice every day. But your prospects feel the same way. When someone they trust is calmly in charge, your prospects want you to lead. I usually listen to a sales conversation without giving any guidance first when I take on a new client. I'm like, just send me what you got. And how it usually goes is they're trying to be really nice and build rapport, and then they start answering a lot of questions. And that is the number one way to stop leading a sales conversation. The person who asks questions stays in control. And I'm not talking about control in a like manipulative sort of way. Because here's the deal. When you're selling an expert service, there is an inherent dynamic. You're the expert, you have the upper hand. You have somebody coming to you who may have an upper hand in their industry, but they're coming to you because they need help, and they need you to guide them. And if you show up in that interaction and you can't guide that 30-minute conversation, how are they going to trust you to guide them to the result that they want? And this is the stuff that people can't put their finger on. But they might have come to Austin and been like, man, I'm so sold on what you're doing. But you have this conversation and you start answering all their questions. You give your power away, you give your authority away to them. And they're like, I don't know why, but now I need to go think about this. So I'm going to teach you how to ask questions. But first, we have to ask for permission. I told this story at the VIP day, so sorry guys, you get to hear this twice. But I recently took my kids to an Iowa Cubs game. The Iowa Cubs are not a big deal at all, but my kids love baseball, so it was a big deal to them. And we're walking through the corridor, and there's all these vendors, and they're like, spinny wheel. And I'm like, timeshare, guys, who are gonna come talk to me. And so my kids spin the wheel, and this guy he's just like like a hound. And normally, like I said, I can hold my own and I can start firing the questions back and take control of the conversation. But he came in so hot, my amygdala got flipped, and I was like, and I froze, and I was like, I gotta get my kids out of here, this is not safe. Like, I really was like, it felt so gross. And I walked away from that, and I was like, man, what happened? Like, how did I get so hijacked? And I was really thinking about it over the next couple days, and I was like, he didn't ask me permission. So it felt like an attack. So you have to ask permission. And this can sound so simple. Hey, is it okay if I ask you a few questions about your business? Hey, is it okay if I ask you some personal questions? Everything we talk about is confidential. You get one yes, this little sales trick for you. You get one yes, you're going to get multiple yeses. So we got to get a yes. Yes, it's okay to have a sales conversation. You can do this in your online marketing. You can do this in your call to action. You can do this verbally. I always start with a verbal agreement. Is it okay to have this conversation? You give them a choice. They opt in. Now you're also not taking anything. And then we get to ask open-ended questions. So this is your action item, okay? I want you to look at your sales conversations, and I want you to think about how you're asking questions. Because getting to a yes means we have to have a conversation about what's actually happening here and what you want. People do not buy when they're confused. And so often, I personally had this happen recently, where I was interviewing coaches. I was like, I want a coach. And I got on a call, and I really wanted her to help me figure out what I wanted. Because I was like, I don't really know what I want. But I know I need a mentor. I know I need a guide. She didn't do that. And I was like, I don't feel compelled to hire her because she didn't help me understand what I wanted. And so the way to find out what they want, who they want it with, where they want it, we just slap one of these onto the question. So instead of, hey, are you struggling with your marketing? Somebody says, no, great, no opportunity for a sales conversation. What's been the biggest challenge in your marketing this year? Really simple way to open up a conversation. Final thing I'm like running over. Okay, final thing. The reason why we feel the need to persuade and convince people often in our business is because we do not have sales infrastructure. So if you're just booking calls with people and you got like no marketing out there, you have to do all the heavy lifting in that conversation. So this is what I teach my students. I run a program, it's called Rainmaker. And I teach my students that we have to have sales systems set up in our business. This is another fancy word for a funnel. We also need to have sales strategies, the things we are going out and doing to acquire new customers that feel really good to us. If your coach is telling you you need to send out 10 cold DMs a day and you're like, I hate that, you're not going to do it. So you got to find someone, find a mentor, find somebody who can help you find strategies that work for you. You got to have the skills, like we just talked about, and you have to have a helpful mindset. Otherwise, you're not going to do these things. So this is for you. This is something I do with all my private clients. We always start with an audit of their sales systems. If you fill this out, I guarantee you just filling it out, you're going to see where some of your gaps are. You're going to fill it out. I'm going to look through it, and then I'm going to send you an email or a Loom video or something. I don't know. I haven't decided what I'm going to do yet. But I will send you back some personalized recommendations based on your business, based on what you're doing, tailored to your sales style, with 1 to 3 actionable items. There's not a pitch in it. If you, from there, want to have a conversation about what it looks like to do some of those things together, we can do that. But this is my gift for you. And if you guys want to talk about sales, just come pick my brain. I love to talk about it. Thank you, guys.